Take one.
Welcome to another edition of ASAM's Fun with Standard webinar series. Today I have the pleasure to talk to Stefan Romainczyk here in beautiful Frankfurt. Stefan is Senior Product Manager for Data Management at Peak Solutions, and Peak Solution has been an ASAM member since 2008. And Stefan is currently working on the projects for ASAM ODS and ASAM Test Specification. Stefan, welcome to our webinar today, and I'm really curious to hear a lot of good things from you about data management and about ASAM.
Thanks, Marius, for the invitation.
Stefan, tell us a little bit more about your personal journey with the standards you have helped create or the projects you're working on, namely ASAM ODS and the ASAM Test Specification project.
Very good. I started my in quote, standardization career back in 1998 when I joined GFS, one of the founding members of the ASAM organization. During that time, I had the pleasure to work with Dr. Helmut Helpenstein, and he's the godfather of ASAM ODS. And he taught me everything about data models, standardization, and he encouraged me to join the ASAM ODS working group. From there on, my career developed throughout the ASAM organization. I was a member of the TSC during the time of Klaus Estenfeld, where we and others worked on the reorganization of the standardization process itself. It was the onboarding time of the OpenX standards and very interesting times. And today's perspective, I'm working with the Test Specification project, which is a very holistic project covering different kind of standards, and here I'm helping from the perspective of ASAM ODS as a cluster lead.
What would be a good elevator pitch to promote ASAM ODS?
ASAM ODS is suited for test data management. It's meant for long-term data storage, and it's meant for reliable long-term data storage. This is why many companies trust in storing the data in the ASAM ODS databases.
Is it more data model, or is it a? You said it's a database. It's a storage format. Does it come as a server? How does it come?
From that perspective, you have to say ASAM ODS is built on three pillars. Mm-hmm. The one pillar is talking about the standardization of how the data is being stored. This is how the bits and bytes get being stored on the database or on file formats. The second pillar is a data model, because what you need when you store data is a kind of semantic context. Mm-hmm. Modern words for this would be data ontology, if you would like to use this word for that. With a data context, you get a very holistic information about your data itself. And the third pillar of ASAM ODS is its API, because what you need is the actual access to the data and through the HTTP APIs, which ASAM provides to get the needed access.
From a business development perspective, how much does ASAM ODS and your involvement in its development support this task?
From a business development point of view, the ASAM ODS or the ASAM standards, they help a lot for us to talk about our offerings in a broader context or even in a non-competitive context. We can bring our products into an environment which not only helps us to sell our products, but also helps our customers, because they can rely on what we develop for them fits into that piece where we need to fit in eventually, because where data management component plays in is a big picture, and we need to fit exactly in that one piece. And if we don't do, then that's a miss. And if there were no standardization, we have to figure out there will be much more meetings, much more negotiation processes, and much more likelihood to fail and more introduced costs.
Would you say that supporting standards is one of the USPs of your company?
Definitely, yes. Peak Solution does a lot for being part of the standardization project, even the size of the company.
Let's go a little bit beyond the elevator pitch. Please tell me a little bit more about ASAM ODS and the Test Specification project.
The Test Specification project tries to define, describe, and eventually standardize the holistic testing process, beginning with the test specification itself, and then all the levels down to the eventual execution of the test. And we divided those steps into 4 different stages. And for all these stages, we define which things are needed from a standardization perspective, which standard exists, and how those standards need to interact with each other. Mm-hmm. Let me make you an example for this. When it comes to the actual execution of the test, the test execution engine and the one which is actually talking to the hardware needs to work with each other. From the ASAM perspective, this is OTX, which is describing the individual steps, and skill, which is somehow controlling how the individual components works. And here we got synergy effects with now those two standards more interactively working together. So that's a big plus of the test specification project.
The key question for us as ASAM is it really beneficial to have this series of standards under the ASAM roof in a single organization?
That's a good question, actually, because especially when you look from the test specification project, I already explained that there are many ASAM standards involved which needs to interact with each other. And the ASAM standards has not been chosen accidentally. It's been chosen because we did a project before where we examined which standard exists in the broader space, and the ASAM standards seems to be the one which are fulfilling the need the best. They are not yet that. And as I explained with OTX and XIL, there is adaptation needed, there is changes needed. And this becomes easier if we can talk to, for instance, the technology manager of the ASAM organization, which helps us to transition that need throughout the various standards groups being involved in that test specification project. Or it's easier for us to communicate, for instance, to the TSC, where we have one body we can report our results against and have that one body where we can claim our request, what needs to change. And there is when ASAM being a big help in that standardization process.
But this does not mean that we are excluding other organizations.
No.
I think we just need to bridge to them and have the discussions going across the organizations. As I understood, having the test specification under one roof is a good start.
Right.
But there may be more things coming up.
Right, exactly.
In ASAM ODS, the existing data in those different companies you're working with is not necessarily standardized, correct?
This is correct.
So how does ASAM ODS bridge the gap between legacy data formats and standardized data storage?
Every company stores data into different kind of formats, typically in file formats, because you want to decouple your data acquisition process from the eventual storing process. Think of server unavailability question and so on and so forth. And those file formats, they vary depending on those different kind of companies you're working with. And one problem is, and that has been a problem to the ASAM ODS standard in the past as well, if you want to standardize, you put it into something which is centralized and standardizing the data. So you move it into something else. And from there you come to the situation of data duplication. So it has been in files, you move it, for instance, in the ASAM ODS database, you have doubled the space of your data. And the other is, think of existing tool chains, because those file formats, they get being consumed by other tools as well. So not only data management tools, but also other tooling, like data analytics tooling, analysis tooling, and so on and so forth. If you move it into the ASAM ODS database, all those tools you have needs to then talk ASAM ODS. That can become a problem. But no problem without solution. So the ASAM ODS group, they have standardized, I think it's 3 or 4 years ago, a technology they call the external data plugins. And that technology is very neat because now you have small microservices which can then open up those data files and make the data available for the ASAM ODS database. With that trick, the original data can stay even at the same place, in the same format, but being standardized through these microservices. And developing these microservices is not rocket science. For instance, if you want to develop a microservice for a simple CSV file, you can take an example and change in this example 3 lines of code, in most cases, and then your CSV file is already running in a kind of standardized way. So that's a very good example where we see that standardization is not a lock-in kind of thing. It's open up the door, that was a question before, into the other worlds, or include the other worlds into the standardization without forcing the standardization to be the thing.
What has changed with the emergence of AI and machine learning in your domain?
AI and machine learning is very data-centric. So data management technologies like ASAM ODS should be very much involved into this new technology stack, which is arising or more or less already there. So, and the question is, how do we integrate things like ASAM ODS in these new landscapes? And their connectivity is also, again, the key. We already have something which is very important in these areas, which is an HTTP API where you can access the data with. But nowadays, new players need to be able to access the data. So those players are typically named data scientists or more virtually AI agents. And they have different kind of needs with respect to how to consume the data eventually. And what we did for the data scientist, for instance, we provide an open source implementation of a Python layer, a very thin Python layer, which then talks to the HTTP API. Why is that important? That's important because data scientists, they don't talk ASAM ODS, but they talk Python. And if you bring a nice Python layer, they are already very close. And there is another small trick in there. The query language of ASAM ODS is very specific. And in that open source library, you find something which maps it to a more kind of publicly understandable, available way, like a MongoDB-like query language. With that, you are now moving the ASAM ODS standard into the data scientist world, and from there you go into AI and machine learning.
You're providing with ODS basically the ground truth. So you give it structure, you give it taxonomy, etc. So the machine can learn from what is really behind the data.
Right. So we can explain what is a test equipment, what is a unit under test, what was the test sequence with which the data has been acquired with, and we can put breadcrumbs into that information, which will then help the AI find information which is stored in a different place. So we have again the connectivity, which means this is easier in the AI world because agentic systems, if you provide them the right breadcrumbs in your answer you gave to the system, they find the next answer in the next system. So we are a very good set for the new kind of area of machine learning and AI.
Despite the standard document, what would you recommend for reading to get more familiar with the topic of ODS and data management?
I think if you want to start exploring what is ASAM ODS, I would refer to the ASAM wiki pages. There is a good summary which helps you which talks about the three pillars I've been talking about, the three layers, how it fits into the overall data management world. So you get a very good overview with starting with the ASAM wiki. If you want to get your hands or feet wet into the ASAM technology, there is another open source library available, which is called the Data Management Learning Path. And in the Data Management Learning Path, you can learn with Jupyter notebooks how to work with an actual ASAM ODS server with live data. You can use the ODS box from that other open source stack. So you get your hands and feet wet into the technology. But if you want to really learn it from the scratch on, my recommendation is join the working group. Here are all the experts. You can sit there, you can learn, and you can become an expert over time.
That's a good recommendation. I like it especially because it expresses two things. One is there is a working group, so everyone is basically continuing to develop the standard. And the second message that I like is even if you're a newbie, you can join. So it's open to everyone. And this is, I think, you said you started in 1998 with standardization and your topic. So we need to bring it to the next generations. Right. I think this is a big topic. And so we need to include the next generation of engineers also in our projects.
And I can only encourage you, join the ODS groups. There are a lot of interesting, funny people working with. Come join the cross-test if you have a product working with ODS. They are always experts. They help you out. It's a good area to work with.
There are project groups. There's documents to write. So it consumes, obviously, quite some time to be part of this standardization work. From your personal motivation and of course, from your company motivation, what's in it for you?
Yeah, the interesting part in working with standardization is you're working with people who want to address the same problem than you want to do. In my perspective, data management problems. And working within a standardization organization means I can talk to my co-expert. And I can do this in a non-competitive environment, which is very important because we do not compete when we work on the standards. So that's for me very interesting because we can talk honestly on what's going on and make suggestions on improvements, further standardization. That's cool. From a company perspective, I already explained that if you do implement a standard, you can give a reliable expectation to your customer what a customer gets when he buys your product. And I explained before that's very important because companies like Peak Solution, we are a small and medium kind enterprise where we fit in. We are working on even big data management project, and without a standard that would be more or less impossible, because we need to explain where we fit in, we need to explain what we do, and we need to explain that we are a reliable partner in that environment. The standard gives us as a small company the proof that we fit into that area where data management is needed and what our kind of piece we bring into the solution would be. That's where the standard helps small companies like Peak Solution.
From the project groups where you are a member, what is the aspect you like most about the project groups, and what other project groups and ASAM itself can learn from your project groups?
What is common in the project groups I'm involved with ASAM Test Specification and ODS is that we are jointly discussing a real problem. Would it be a data management problem or a test specification problem? And this is something which I think is unique, because we are in a non-competitive environment and thinking about solutionizing the thing, test specification, data management processes. And I wouldn't say that's something to learn from the ASAM for the ASAM organization. Is something where I would like to encourage the members of the ASAM organization. If you bring your problems to the organization, there are a lot of experts who love solving problems and standardizing them. And this is something we can learn as a ASAM community. If there is a problem, don't discuss it on your own. Bring it to the respective group or talk to the ASAM organization or the technical steering committee. Describe your problem. We have seen new standards coming up exactly from that kind of mood where you say, here is a problem, ASAM, would you think that fits into your problem space? And this is something I would encourage the ASAM community. Bring your problems. There are a lot of experts who love problem solving.
How do you see the interaction with other project groups? You already mentioned the TSC, which is basically the top level kind of interaction. But do you directly address other project groups, for example?
Mostly the project groups we are talking with have some kind of relation to the standards we are working with. If you take ASAM ODS as an example, there is another data management standard in the ASAM portfolio, that's MDF. That's for streaming measurement data. And definitely we want to consume that streaming measurement data into the ASAM ODS server. So we are actively working with them in kind of homogenization processes. Here also these data plugin technologies, these external data plugins, microservices I've talked about, are a big help, because you can store a bunch of information into an MDF file, and you can store it in gazillions of different ways. And companies are doing it differently, even though it's standardized. It's still good. Store your data in MDF files. But there are a specific way on extracting the data, and there those microservices can help with to identify those pieces which needs to go in a specific areas of the ODS data model. That's very perfect how these standards interact with each other. From the test specification project, there is even a much broader scope, because many more standards needs to work with each other to solve the individual steps being involved in from defining the test down to the execution. And here we are learning how other standards need to work with each other. I already mentioned OTX and XIL. There is one important project where we try to combine those two. We need to figure out how we would like to connect to ASAM ODS data. We put this a little bit outside in the first phase, where we said there is kind of a layer on top which gets the data out of ODS and puts it into OTX or XIL to make it possible, also into OpenX. So you see many standards involved, and here again, the technology managers are very important, I think, because they sit in our meetings, they consume the information, and we can give them back some kind of organizational stuff which would be hard to handle. Like, we need to talk with these two groups because we find this, or these two standards need to develop this. And the technology manager, they can spread the information throughout the organization. That's good.
How has the use or the requirements for ASAM ODS changed over the years?
As we see, ASAM ODS is now around for more than 25 years. And how comes that the standard is still around for that long amount of time? I think the first thing is ASAM ODS in its kernel, it's very stable, and in its outside, it's very active. What I mean by this, I give some examples. So when we started with ASAM ODS, the first interface on an ASAM ODS server was an RPC interface, remote procedure calls. There was only a very simple query language, and the customer feedback was the query language was not enough. So an extended query language has been developed. Then there comes the feedback that remote procedure calls is not the technology stack to go with. So CORBA has been chosen to be more industry specific. And from CORBA, we evolved to HTTP, which is nowadays, I would say, de facto ASAM ODS standard, even though the other access capabilities still exist, even being deprecated, they are still defined. And if you have an old solution, we know how to deal with. There are other examples in that area. Besides storing the data in a database, ASAM ODS also specifies a file format to store the data in, to exchange the data with other ASAM ODS server or other parties, or even to allow long-time storage and put it onto something file-serving systems. The ATF standard started as an ASCII format. Nowadays, it has been transformed, or nowadays, it's 20 years ago, it has been transformed into an XML format, which is much, much more future-proof because of the capabilities of XML in it. Another example would be when we talk about security. Security in these days is one of the most important pieces in a data management technology stack. You were talking about SOVD, over-the-air updates. So if you are doing over-the-air update and you're releasing a car with every over-the-air update, the whole process where the data is coming from needs to be in a secure and reliable way. So, and also in this area, ASAM ODS has developed over time. We started with some, I would say, a homegrown kind of technology in an ASAM ODS server, and this has been involved now in the working group is currently standardizing how to connect an ASAM ODS server securely using the OpenID Connect standard, which is the industry standard when talking about securely data connectivity. So it's all about keeping the standard active, keeping it alive, and adapting it to the industry standards, which are the requirement from our customer sides.
ASAM's vision is accelerate engineering for mobility. Mm-hmm. So what's your opinion on this rather wide scope? Does it fit to ASAM?
When we look into the past, this is a slight change to the original mission or scope of ASAM, because ASAM started very much automotive based. And I like it that we're now looking more into mobility, because I think what we have already standardized within the realm of the automotive industry fits very good into other industry spaces as well. Think in the direction of aerospace, think land machinery. Here, I think ASAM opens the door for us all to look into these new industry spaces and adapt to what we have into those. Especially data management, test and measurement data management stays the same. So it doesn't matter if you collect the data while driving on a tractor, while flying on a plane, or while driving a car. It's still test and measurement data, and making ASAM ODS again as an example, it stays in the center, and it can keep the data as it is from different kind of industry spaces. So I very much like the change from automotive to mobility.
Now, I asked you to provide a single line, and it's not endless long. So a single line statement about what ASAM means to you personally.
ASAM is the best place, if you like, non-competitive work with other people, or the new modern term would be competition.
Perfect. I like that statement. How do you feel, or how would you feel, depending on what kind of vehicle you have, how do you feel in a vehicle that has ASAM standards implemented?
My preferred vehicle is my bicycle. Because of the close distance between home and office, I ride my bicycle to work. But I think I would feel even more engaged riding my bicycle, knowing that the bicycle itself or parts of it has been developed based on the ASAM standards.
That's a very great conclusion of this talk. Thank you very much, Stefan, for coming here to Frankfurt, to sharing the sofa with me. And yeah, happy to talk to you anytime again when we have a chance to see you in more standards involved or when the next update of ODS is coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. This concludes this session of the webinar ASAM Fundus Standards. Stay tuned for more coming up. And if you're interested also in giving a talk by yourself, if you're involved in the ASAM standards, in the development, just reach out to us and we will be more than happy to have you also on our ASAM couch. I think we have to take this one with us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
I learned something. Ja, die Dorothee kriegt, glaube ich, die Originalfassung nicht zu sehen. Genau.
Wer weiß, wer weiß.